Moin and welcome to the links! I know you waited a long time again for this video, but this whole YouTube drama threw me a little back in my schedule, to be honest. Moreover, I replaced the animated intro with this lame me talking thingy until things are a little clearer. So no worries, it won't stay this way, but I need some more time and experimentation what will work out and what not in order to stay on YouTube. Nevertheless, here I am, back for you with a new project and still a few things that have to change before January. But my plans for 2020 got even better by now and I feel really motivated for the new year. But let's concentrate on the current project I want to share with you. Consisting this dark and cold season, I decided to create a doll with dark blues and white accents, but turn it into something magical and positive. So I came up with the idea of some sort of dark dream elf. As a base, I used this made to move Barbie because I really liked her movability. The joints really remind me of the 17-inch Monster High dolls, to be honest. After carefully removing her head from the body, I started to cut the hair as close to the head as possible and removed the remaining plugs with a screwdriver and some tweezers. Normally, I now would remove the factory paint, but this time I decided against it because I liked the size and position of the eyes, so I used them as a guide for the eye holes. For that, I used a sharp X-Acto knife and slowly removed the plastic. Please be careful if you do this by yourself, since the blades are really sharp and can hurt you pretty badly. When I was satisfied with the result, I continued removing her human ears, because an elf always has pointy ears, at least for me. After a little sanding, it was time to finally remove the factory paint. For that, I always use pure acetone and some cotton pads. It's a very degreasing chemical, so please be careful if your skin comes in contact with it. Another skin irritating substance is my beloved Apoxie. Therefore, I only use it with gloves. In this case, I wanted to give the doll a closed mouth and a little bigger nose. It's just personal preference, but I like a neutral expression much more on a doll than a smile or a sad face or else. It was the first time for me sculpting a pair of lips, and I had a lot of struggle, but it ended up quite okay in the end, I guess. When the first layer of the epoxy was dry, I could start sanding the mods and the face a little more. After that, I went in with more epoxy clay to shape the lips and nose. I also sanded away her printed on panties on the body and could finally start with colors. But before that, I secured my epoxy sculpting on the face with super glue like I saw Motion do it. Then it was time for my very first try to dye a whole doll. Many artists had great results with these red dye more colors, so I bought a bottle in the color navy blue and started the experiment. Since I also wanted to give the smooth hair gradient another try, I started with some acrylic yarn. First step was to wash the strands and then dunk the tips into the hot water. Even after some seconds, it looked really good, but the most color came out pretty easy again, so I decided to let it soak in the color a little more. Another thing I had to learn the hard way was the fact that the color climbed up the yarn over time, so the gradient did not come out as dominant as I had wished for. But well, at least I learned a whole lot, and that's what matters the most, I think. Learning and having fun while doing so. After a little while, I could finally start dyeing the doll itself. The first problem I noticed was that the stupid body was floating like crazy, but I somehow managed to get it covered. And here you can see the result! Sadly, the plastic did not react as planned. Some parts of the doll got really dark, nearly black, while others did not really change. Moreover, the glue I added on the face sealed in the material, so there was no color changing at all. Oh well, I should have known. To match the spots with the rest, I just painted it over with acrylic paint and sealed it with Liquitex matte varnish. Since all my dolls do have inserted eyes, I had to open her head with my X-Acto knife. After that, I started with the rerooting. Here you can see the result of my dyed yarn. It does have a gradient, but I had wished for a much darker blue at the tip. Well, anyways, I split up the strands and took my long needle and scissors. Just punch the needle eye through one of the holes, make a knot in one end of the strand, thread it, pull through, and you have a yarn hair. This method really takes quite a while, but I think it's worth it in the end. Especially when it comes to yarn as doll hair. After a million years of rerooting, the head looked like this, and I was already pretty satisfied with the contrast between hair and skin color. Now it was time for her pointy elf ears. I found this so-called silk clay that stays flexible once dry, so I thought this could be really perfect for ears. For better stabilization, I inserted some wire inside the head and secured it with hot glue. To match her skin color, I mixed some blue, black and purple clay together and started forming the ears around the wire. This clay was not like epoxy and pretty difficult for me to sculpt with. So if somebody knows how to smooth this stuff out, please help me. Once they dried completely, I also secured them with super glue directly on the plastic. So far so good, now let's start with some colors. To prepare the plastic for my soft pastels and watercolor pencils, I sprayed it with Mr. Super Clear Sealant. It's a pretty toxic spray, so don't forget to use a high filtration mask and some gloves. And never ever spray inside. One coat needs about half an hour to dry, but after that I went full in with my pastels. I really wanted to light up the area around her eyes and bring in some purples and pinks to have a little contrast to the dark blue. Once I was satisfied with the result, I sprayed the face with another layer of MSC just to see that the light colors kinda disappeared. So I brushed on some more light pastels in hope it would help, but no. Even worse than the first attempt. At this point I gave up and tried making the light blush with a sponge and some of my gouache colors. This time it finally survived the sealant, and I went in with some more pastels under the eyes and shadows around the nose bridge to give the face a little more contour. The eyebrows were a real struggle, as always, but especially this time, to be honest. For her lips, I was a little unsure whether letting them dark or making them light, but I then thought that her eye region already grabs enough attention, so her lips can stay this dark. The last step was the one I was most excited about. I took my white gouache paint and a teeny tiny brush to draw her some white lashes and nice tattoos. Overall, I was really in love with her face at this point, to be honest. Now she needed a beautiful body too, of course. As expected, the paint scratched off of the joints, so I tried to cover it up with 100 layers of pastels and MSC, and I was able to cover up most parts, but for the rest I just used gouache paint again. For the blushing, I used a light pink and some purples, but like on the face, they sadly disappeared with the sealant layers. Anyway, to match body and face even more, I gave her some more tattoos everywhere. When everything, including the last layer of MSC, was dry, I gave the whole doll a last coat of finishing sealant with Liquitex matte varnish and set her aside to dry. In the meantime, I was able to work on her eyes. This time I wanted to test a new mold that I bought on Etsy and some white resin. So this was my very first try to make resin eyes, and I was so excited. I chose one of the smaller molds and placed it under my UV lamp for a few minutes. Ah, look at them! I was in love at first sight. As a base color, I chose a light purple, like the blush on her face, and let it dry. This was the moment I realized they might still be a little too big for the head, so I did one smaller pair and filled them with glitter. Now it was time to build the lenses with some clear UV resin. I first covered the glitter with the first layer, let it cure, painted a small pupil on top and created the rest. And ta-da! Perfect little mushroom eyes! I was really happy with the outcome. But for a nice eye, she also needed some lashes that I painted with the white acrylic paint to match her bottom lashes. I glued them in her head first before inserting her beautiful eyes with epoxy. It's always a little tricky and I still haven't found the perfect way to do it, but it gets better, I guess. Now that most of her is done, I gave her hair a little more attention. First step was to brush out her yarn hair with a wired pet brush. After that, I sprayed a little water on it, like you do it when you iron your clothes. Last step was now to flatten it with a flat iron to receive some shiny, beautiful hair. The roots may look a little ugly at this point, but it's only because the hair hasn't dried completely at this point. I heated up the plastic of her head with a hairdryer to easily place it back on her body. So now it was time to close her scalp again. To do so, I used some super glue to have a fast and easy result. That really comes in handy, cause I was immediately able to give her a nice new hairstyle this way. I really like braids, so I wanted to give her at least one or two, But in the process I realized that I never tried a French braid before, so my decision was set. I think it looks pretty nice, don't you think? At this point, it's already visible that the light around her eyes is slowly fading again, and I really don't know why, to be honest. Now that the doll is done, she needed an outfit, right? I will be honest to you, I really tried to sew her something nice, but it just wasn't working out at all. I got a little frustrated since I wasn't able to find some patterns to match my idea, so in the end I went with her original clothes at the base and added some details and stuff. First I cut off the shirt so it would only cover her chest and not her belly. The next step was to dye both of the pieces with the same color I wanted to change her skin color with. It worked out much better with these fabrics, but me being a little dum-dum didn't press the record button when I decorated the pieces. At least I filmed one detail, which is her crown. It's pretty simple, just silver wire twisted and bent in place, but I think it really looks quite good. So now I had everything done and could dress her up. Sadly the paint scratched off of some joints again, but the clothes covered this up. It's not the best solution, but I already tried so hard to fix this issue before, without success. And here she is! Overall I'm quite happy with her, even though many things didn't work out as planned. Especially the light blush around her eyes bothers me quite a bit, because now it's not really visible anymore. I added some more white on her face afterwards to give it a little more contrast, but I really would have loved the blush. Okay, I have to interrupt at this point. I thought I was done, but look at this. The blush is nearly gone. I mean, what? Why? Like I said, I tried to give the face a little more contrast with these additional whites, but I liked her less and less every day. So now, one last try to fix this issue. I covered up her eyes with some washi tape and took out my gouache paints and a small makeup sponge again. I then carefully dabbed on the color on her face and tried to give her a smooth blush. It is of course much easier with pastels, but well, I do what I can here. As a little finishing touch, I also added some metallic watercolors for some extra shine. Then I covered her hair and body with foil and kitchen paper to spray her with MSC again. She looks much better now, and I'm curious how long it will last. Back to the video. Her name will be Elaine, which means the bride or the beauty, and of course she has a little story. As the name suggests, dream elves have the power to generate beautiful dreams by touching other life forms. But it's not as easy as it sounds. Dream elves are very small and can't fly. Moreover, it's very important for them to stay invisible, so they mostly come out when it's dark night. Every time they succeed in giving someone a beautiful dream, their little jar fills up a little more. But every time they get seen, they lose a bit of their power. One of these magic little creatures is Elaine. With her 475 years, she's still very young, but already one of the most successful. The dreams that she creates are the ones that wrap you into a warm feeling that stays with you the whole day. But even the best elf has its ups and downs. Once she came to a very big dog who had a bad nightmare. He was whining and twitching in his sleep, so it was really difficult to get near him. Elaine was already really close when he accidentally kicked her with his paw, and she slid a few inches over the floor. Other elves would have given up at this point, but not Elaine. With pain in her back, she stood up and made it to the sleeping dog, able to gently stroke his fur and giving him a beautiful dream in the end. That was a little story. I hope you liked it as well as the video. I'm really thankful for your patience and I'm already excited for the next year. Till then, I wish you a wonderful December and we will see us again on Christmas. Thank you all so much for your support. See you soon. Tschüss!